Welcome to the Classic Soap Operas podcast, where we dive deep into the unforgettable characters, shocking twists, and wildest storylines that made daytime TV so iconic. Today, we're talking about a soap opera legend, Stefano DiMera, the Phoenix, the mastermind, the villain who never stayed dead. Whether you've followed Days of Our Lives for decades, or you're just getting to know the world of Salem, you're in for a ride. Because this isn't just a character profile, this is the story of how one man became the ultimate symbol of soap opera villainy.
Okay, let's get into it. Stefano DiMera. Wow. Just saying the name, it kind of brings up all those classic soap opera villain vibes, doesn't it?
It really does.
And, here's maybe a bold way to start. Are we talking about possibly the most unkillable villain in TV history? Like, ever?
It's a strong claim, but honestly,
Yeah.
when you look at the sheer number of times Days of Our Lives brought him back from, well, seemingly certain death, it's kind of remarkable.
Right.
And we've got some great source material here that really tries to unpack this whole thing, all those deaths, the impact he had, the actor Joseph Mascolo, and just the whole legend of the Phoenix.
Absolutely. So whether you, listening, have followed Salem's drama for years, or maybe you're just dipping your toes into this wild world of daytime soaps, I think you're going to find this fascinating.
Yeah.
We really dive deep into this character who is, well, truly one of a kind.
And that's the core question, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
How did Stefano DiMera get that nickname, the Phoenix? The mythical bird, reborn from ashes. And why are we still talking about him? Years after his final screen death, and sadly, the passing of the actor who played him so brilliantly, that's what we want to figure out today. The enduring appeal, the power of this legendary villain.
So, okay, let's go back. Way back, 1982, that's when Stefano DiMera first shows up.
Yeah.
And, a couple of other actors played him briefly, but it was Joseph Mascolo who just was Stefano for pretty much everyone watching.
Well, and it's interesting. Apparently, the head writer back then really wanted Mascolo specifically. She'd seen him play a crime boss in something else and just knew, Saw that mix of, charm and total menace. Perfect for a soap villain on that scale.
And it didn't take long for him to start racking up those near-death experiences, did it? Let's talk 1985, the ice rink. That whole scene.
Oh, yeah. Iconic.
Marlena, totally pushed to the edge by his scheming. She finally confronts him. One of our sources even says Stefano was, smug as always, even right then.
Yeah, and the scene itself is just so theatrical, right? Marlena shoots him. He falls onto these oily rags, deliberately set on fire, mind you, and the whole place just goes up in flames.
Oh.
It's such a visual. You really get why Salem thought, okay, that's it, he's gone. They even found a burned body they identified as his.
But this is Stefano DiMera, so of course not.
Exactly. He comes back, defies the odds, and one source puts it perfectly. Even flames and bullets couldn't finish him. That was really the moment, the start of that whole pattern.
The birth of the legend, kind of.
Pretty much. From then on, anytime someone said Stefano was dead, everyone in Salem was like, oh, sure he is. Healthy skepticism became the default.
Right. That first comeback really set the stage, didn't it? For him and maybe for the show, just embracing the unbelievable sometimes.
It totally did. It told the audience and the other characters, look, the normal rules, they just don't apply to this guy. He's playing a different game.
Okay, fast forward to 1994. This was a big year for his unkillable reputation. A real double feature of fake deaths.
Oh, yeah. First, you had that big car chase with John Black, his big rifle, right?
Yeah.
Ends in this massive fiery explosion.
You'd think that would do it. Game over.
Absolutely. One source says everyone was certain no one could survive it, but nope. Weeks later, Stefano just strolls back in like nothing happened.
Unbelievable.
And then, not long after that, he supposedly drowns near his big fancy house, Maison Blanche.
They even searched the water for him. Again, everyone in Salem thinks, okay, now he's gone.
And again, nope, he pops back up, dramatic as ever. Total shock, total horror for everyone else. A source even jokes the Salem PD learned, explosions, drowning, just minor schedule changes for Stefano.
Right. And you can see how this constant back and forth would just intensify things with John Black.
Definitely. It wasn't just hero versus villain anymore. It got really personal, almost mythic. This whole cycle, death and return, it just cemented that idea. Stefano wasn't quite human.
And if you thought that was crazy, then came 1996. Stefano basically treated death like a minor cold that year.
Right. First, his plane explodes. Midair. Debris everywhere. Statistically impossible to survive. And for a second, Salem thought, okay, this time, For real.
No.
Not even close. Because right after the plane crash, he's presumed dead again when a tunnel collapses on him. Buried under tons of rock. No chance of rescue.
Man, the whiplash for people in Salem must have been insane.
Totally. You barely process one death, and bam, another one happens. And just as fast, after both incidents, he just reappears.
Right.
No explanation. Like, he just got back from a slightly boring trip.
The psychological effect of that.
Had to be huge. Deep paranoia, constant fear. As one source said, Stefano mocked death openly. People just couldn't trust any news about him being dead anymore. That period really made him the icon, the unstoppable force.
So now we move past the, let's say, more conventional near deaths, if explosions count as conventional. And into some really tricky stuff. Manipulation technology, 2012. The fake death, plotted by Ian McAllister.
Yeah, this one's interesting because it wasn't actually Stefano who died. Ian used a body double, this guy Paolo, and staged his murder to look like Stefano's.
Why?
It was all this elaborate revenge plot against Stefano's son, EJ. It really showed how Stefano could still be pulling the strings, even when everyone thought he was gone.
Right, so even when he seemed down and out, he was still influencing things. And when the real Stefano showed up again.
It blew Ian's whole plan apart. EJ got cleared of the murder, but you can imagine how messed up he was by the whole thing. It just proves Stefano's reach was, well, seemingly endless.
That one really showed his manipulative side, didn't it? Controlling things without even being there. No wonder people felt like they could never escape his web.
Exactly. Permanent unease you just never knew for sure.
Then 2016, the big one with Hope Brady. This was intense.
Super intense. Hope was just consumed by grief and anger after Beau was kidnapped and she thought killed. She confronts Stefano at the DiMera mansion and shoots him 3 times.
And in that moment of panic.
Yeah, she and Rafe make that snap decision, bury the body quickly. And for a little while, Salem breathed again, thought maybe, just maybe, the nightmare was over.
Stefano.
Yeah.
The body disappears.
Vanishes, and then months later, these photos surface from Prague, a guy who looks exactly like Stefano.
Oh man, panic stations again.
Total confusion. Now, it turned out later that that guy was Shane Donovan in disguise, helping Hope out legally.
Okay, so a bit of a red herring.
Sort of. But then another photo showed up later, unexplained. Just enough to plant that seed of doubt again. Could he still be out there? That constant uncertainty was just brutal for people, always living under that shadow.
And just when you think it can't get any weirder, 2019, technological resurrection. This is pure sci-fi territory.
It really is. His super loyal, maybe slightly unhinged scientist, Dr. Rolf.
Gotta love Dr. Rolf.
Right. He manages to copy Stefano's consciousness onto a microchip and implants it, wait for it, into Steve Johnson, Patch.
No, not Patch.
Yep. Good old dependable Steve Johnson suddenly becomes Stefano.
Yeah.
Basically Stefano driving Steve's body.
That is deeply disturbing.
Oh, yeah. And Stefano immediately tries to get the DiMera empire back. And, of course, goes right back to his obsession with Marlena. Even tries to chip her.
Oh, my God.
One source really highlights how upsetting this was for Salem. Seeing this hero, Steve, turned into a puppet for Stefano.
It takes the unkillable thing to a whole new level, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's not just surviving bullets anymore. It's his actual mind surviving.
Exactly. They did eventually get the chip out, and supposedly destroyed Stefano's consciousness for good that time. But the damage, especially for Marlena, lasting, really profound.
Wow. So even after that, after the chip, after everything, his presence is still felt in Salem, isn't it? It's kind of amazing how he lingers.
It is fascinating how they keep his legacy alive. Like, his portrait is still hanging in the DiMera mansion, right? Big, imposing. Like, he's still watching.
Characters actually talk to it, don't they?
They do. And then you have Kristen DiMera, who's always good for some drama, claiming she saw him alive somewhere. Just enough to stir things up again.
Classic.
And even the devil, remember the possession storyline? Even the devil seemed to have this weird, like, grudging respect for Stefano's level of evil.
Ah. That says something.
And don't forget the Phoenix ring. That symbol of his power, it still pops up, gets passed around.
So even without him physically there, he's still driving plots, causing paranoia.
Absolutely. Mistrust, power struggles in the DiMera family. It all still revolves around him in a way. His mystique is kind of immortal.
And it's important to remember Joseph Miscolo, the actor, passed away in 2016, battled Alzheimer's, but the character just persisted.
Yeah, and our sources mentioned his background. He was a musician too, played with the Met Orchestra. Apparently he wasn't sure about doing a soap at first.
Really?
Yeah, but the head writer really pushed for him. And Mascola himself had this great quote about playing Stefano focusing on power, family loyalty, but also knowing the bad guy cannot be totally dark. He gave him layers.
You could see that. There was complexity there.
Yeah, definitely. And thinking about the impact of soaps, one source talks about how shows like Days can really affect viewers, especially kids maybe. Seeing someone like Stefano constantly cheat death, it can blur fantasy and reality, cause some emotional turmoil potentially.
That's an interesting point.
Yeah, and it also mentions how soaps really pioneered that addictive storytelling, didn't they? Cliffhangers, constant drama.
Stefano was perfect for that, wasn't he? Always
Yeah.
wondering how he'd come back next. Kept you hooked.
Totally. And speaking of his status, the Soap Hub Daytime Legends article flat out names him the #1 soap opera villain of all time.
#1. That's huge. What did they say made him #1?
Well, you know, the classic stuff. The vendetta against the Bradys, the obsession with Marlena, all the brainwashing, the baby switching.
Oh, yeah, the baby switches. Soap opera gold.
He did it all. And another article, Carrying on the Legacy, marks the anniversary of Mascolo's debut, talks about the immediate impact he had, lists some of his most outlandish crimes, and yeah, the list is long.
I bet.
And it mentions his son, Stefano DiMera, trying to live up to that legacy. Big shoes to fill.
For sure. And even recently, there was an article, these 4 DiMera family members need an overhaul. And it basically said the current DiMeras need to, step up and make Stefano proud.
See, even now, he's the benchmark, the standard for DiMera villainy. Even gone, he's still the reference point.
Which brings us to this Reddit discussion we found. Really interesting question. Who suffered the most because of Stefano?
Oof, that's a tough one. So many people went through hell because of him.
The discussion brought up good points for a few people. John Black, obviously, losing his memory, his identity over and over.
Huge suffering there. And Marlena being the target of his obsession for decades. Just constant trauma. Roman Brady, too, the original rival, locked away.
But the argument for Tony DiMera seemed really strong in that thread.
Yeah, Tony's story's just heartbreaking, losing 20 years of his life, imprisoned on some island by Stefano, and then having his own cousin, Andre, get plastic surgery to look like him and just ruin his reputation.
20 years, that's staggering.
It really is. The Reddit users also mention Hope, being manipulated, pushed to shoot him, and even poor Benji, whose mom was killed, and he eventually died because of Andre.
Yeah.
All tracing back to Stefano's plotting.
So it wasn't just one person. His villainy spread out, damaged so many lives.
Yeah.
It really shows how central he was and how destructive.
Absolutely. While you can argue for John or Marlena, that sheer amount of time stolen from Tony, 2 decades because of Stefano, that makes a very compelling case for him suffering the most.
Yeah.
But the fact that we can even debate it, that so many characters have strong claims, that just proves what an effective and devastating villain Stefano really was.
So wrapping this up, Stefano DiMera, all those deaths, all those comebacks, it cemented him as this unkillable icon, a true legend.
But it was more than just surviving, wasn't it? It was the manipulation, the Stefano chip thing.
Right, the technological leap.
And just that psychological hold he still seems to have on Salem, even now. It's remarkable.
Yeah. So whether you've watched every single twist or you're just getting to know him now, his story is just a wild ride, isn't it?
Yeah.
A real case study in villainy and, well, the unique magic of daytime TV.
It really is a perfect example of that kind of larger-than-life storytelling.
And maybe here's a final thought for you to chew on. What does it say about us, about storytelling, that we're so fascinated by characters who just refuse to die?
Good question.
Did Stefano always coming back make him more compelling? Or did it kind of lower the stakes after a while? And, who else is out there in fiction with that kind of unkillable quality? Why do those characters stick with us?
Definitely something to think about. The undying villain. It's a powerful trope.
And that's a wrap on today's episode of the podcast. Stefano DiMera wasn't just a villain. He was a legend. His power, his presence, and his constant resurrections made him unforgettable. And even now, his shadow still hangs over Salem. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, feel free to share it with a fellow soap fan, leave a rating, or drop a comment. I'd love to hear who you think suffered the most at Stefano's hands. Until next time, keep it dramatic and keep it classic.